Okay, welcome and thank you for joining us today for some information about the new Spike Python API release. I'm Emily Hayes. I'm the head of customer success with LEGO Education, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to Chris Delasinskis. She is one of our senior software engineers with LEGO Education. And I also have on the line a number of our other colleagues who will be here to help staff the chat, answer your questions, and provide some direction. So yes, we have Paul and Sam, we have Diana, we have David. So we have a number of folks here to answer your questions and to make sure that you feel well prepared for the API release. So let's get started. Okay, Chris, if we could go to the next slide.
I think, Emily, you might have taken control. It is not letting me navigate.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so I'm not sure how that happened. So, okay. All right, then I will see if I can forward the slide, which I cannot do. Sorry, Chris, if maybe you could share. Perfect.
All right. Am I back?
Thank you. Yes, you are. Thank you.
Wonderful.
So, again, just a quick welcome to everyone. Some of you might have heard about this webinar today, either via social media channels, or if you had purchased a Spike set, or if you are a part of our customer success program. And so I want to take this opportunity to invite all of you who are not yet already a part of this customer success program to join. That's what the QR code is for you there, and I'll put the link in the chat in just a moment. But this is a way for us to communicate directly with our users, information about the product, or to invite you to special events such as webinars like this. So please take a moment, join customer success if you would. And like I said, I'll put the link in the chat in just a moment. And then if we could go one more slide. Thank you. And this is the reason why we're all here today. So again, talking about that Spike app and the new Python API. Chris will be going through what those features are and showing you some quick demos. And then we'll talk about what is the best timing for you and your students or your teachers to update, as well as provide answers to the questions that you have. Okay, so what does this Python API mean? So most of you are probably pretty techie savvy, but the API is that interface that enables the communication between the different software components. So this happens, as you see, when this user puts the Python input on the screen, and then it's going to talk to our hubs, which contain motors and sensors and the display. And so that will affect some of the changes, and it's really that interface and how the communication can happen. So that is what we mean by the API. It's that conduit. And then I think we jump right in and talk about, okay, some of the key features. So Chris will be going into detail with these different features that we have, but you'll know that it is a much faster hub connection, like up to 4 times faster than before. Chris will also show you that model movement and prediction, how that's been enhanced. There is a firmware upgrade. So while you are able to access have the early access to the API now, you will also need to upgrade your firmware and do those downloads once the release has been finalized. We have support for those larger user programs and then the simplified motor and movement blocks as well. So we'll give folks just a second to kind of preview some of the information here. And I know we have folks who are still joining us too. All right, so let's get excited. Let's see what Chris has in store for us today. And oops, there's one more key feature slide here. Sorry about that. So again, it talks about that the greater responsiveness and the easier communication. But please note that your previously saved Python programs will not be compatible with the new Python API. So when you're making the decision about when and how to upgrade, please make sure that you are aware of this. So the key recommendation is not to upgrade until you're done with either your FLL competitions, or you're done with your summer courses, or you're just completely done using the programs and you have a nice clean break and a new beginning for use with your students.
All right. I can take over from here. So, hi, my name is Chris. Thank you for introducing me earlier, Emily. I am one of our software developers over here at Lego Education. Today, I'm excited to share with you 3 of the biggest changes coming with this newest release of Python. So first, for many students and teachers, Python is a whole new language and experience, so diving in can be a little bit daunting. In order to mitigate some of these worries, we've added a knowledge base in order to provide guidance and documentation. So when we open into the Python canvas, the knowledge base will be to the right of the coding canvas. It will be open to 2 sets of documents. The first is called the Getting Started tab. This tab provides 9 different micro lessons in order to get students and teachers comfortable with writing their first Python code. It goes over not only some core concepts of Python, but also how to incorporate attachments to the project, such as the motor, the color sensor, etc. However, the Getting Started tab won't be going into detail about every single function available. That's where the API modules tab comes in. The API modules is an encyclopedia of every module, submodule, function, and constant that LEGO Spike uniquely provides to the Python environment. As we can see here, by navigating to the module we want to use, in this case, the color matrix, we can find details every step of the way to explain what each one is and how to use it and its related functions. Let's talk about one more handy feature about the knowledge base. Say a child knows what they want to do, but not exactly where to find the information on that. The knowledge base is not just a dictionary to skim through, but it also provides a search feature. Just by typing in a keyword into the search bar, documentation from both the Getting Started and the API sections of the knowledge base are filtered and provided, so that children will have easy and immediate access to any information needed on the desired subject matter. Next, let's take a peek at some of the updates to the canvas itself. While reading documentation is a very useful skill, sometimes we want to just jump right into the code and get typing. When beginning to type out different modals or functions, the new autocomplete feature can prompt for different potential options. This behavior can not only allow for figuring out what kids want to do if it's on the tip of their tongue, but also opens up potential for checking out other new actions with which they might not yet have played with. Discoverability as a feature of the environment gives children the same kind of toolbox as the Scratch side drawer for being able to explore what kinds of functions are available to them. This new tool opens the door to potential usability and actions that might not have even been conceived. Paired with autocomplete comes inline documentation, an additional new feature which makes Python much easier to use. Say a new function has been discovered, but its name alone might not give enough insight into it. While one could search for this function in the knowledge base, inline documentation takes away the extra research step. Inline documentation, as the name suggests, provides definitions and descriptions of both the functions and their required parameters right as the child is using them. Instead of having to guess, retry, guess again, and repeat, explanations are provided to easily learn and better digest what these new functions are supposed to do and how to make them work. One more new feature of the canvas is error alerting and its impact in the console. Instead of forcing a child to compile broken code without understanding what's going wrong, a red squiggly line will appear under functions or logic that require some touching up in order to run properly. Hovering over these squiggles will provide convenient messaging showing how to make the code correct. However, sometimes a kid will hit run without fixing the errors, whether it be because they didn't see the red squiggle or for the fun of it to see what happens. Now, our console, which lives at the bottom of the canvas and can be scrolled up and down to hide or show, We'll alert the code when it was ran and spit out messaging informing what went wrong and where. If we followed the code trail, we can see how one error affects the whole entire code stack. The information given here is a little bit more complex, but is a great tool for learning about the flow of code and developing every engineer's favorite skill, debugging. So one major piece of feedback we received in the past iteration of Python was that the console could get flooded with messages, and it was not clear when new ones would occur. Brand new to this iteration of Python, in addition to the clearly marked runtimes, is a convenient button which allows us to entirely clear the console. Finally, let's get to the most exciting part of this new Python release, which is the new functionality. So Python gives a lot better control of the timing of students' code. Do you see these two different code examples? The only difference here is the one word in the beginning of each line, await, but we can see how this changes the actions. The await keyword in front of the lines makes it so that one action must be completed before the next one can begin. These actions are asynchronous, whereas actions without that keyword will run at the same time. With the power of being able to await for code to complete versus letting things run at the same time, kids have more power in the flow of command of their creations, and hence how they want them to behave. Additionally, with this release of Python, we have brought in the app module. This module allows for functionality separate from the hub or logic that executes on the computer itself. Most of these different modules can be found in the extensions panel of the Word Blocks canvas, so as listed in those submodules as we see on screen. With the bar and line graphs, children can display and analyze data coming in from what their machine does. Depending on an input, they can show different images on the screen with the display. And of course, adding sounds and music is always a ton of fun. So I hope this brief introduction has given you inspiration to test out Python, either yourself with your own little ones or with children in your classroom. Luckily, Python is currently available in early access. In order to turn on Python, you'll go to the Settings tab or button, navigate to General, and find the Enable Python Projects tab. Currently, we only have the English language available. And I will pass it back over to Emily just for a brief summary of what we've gone over and some final ways to learn how to update.
Great, thank you, Chris. Okay, so you are welcome at any moment or at any time to put questions that you have in the chat. We're just going to kind of quickly recap what some of the new features and functionality are with the API release. But as Chris showed, there's going to be that autocomplete function. I saw that people had, the reactions with clapping and hearts. It's wonderful. And this should simplify the work for your students. It will also provide that faster coding experience. We have more resources and support to help you, such as that extended knowledge base. And then also, this will, the search features for finding coding examples and maybe discovering new functionality is another key feature for this. So it looks like we have a couple of people who are asking questions. Is it possible to encapsulate functions in separate files as a library? Is the first question. So I know that we will be providing some documentation online, both probably through our search port or our service portal, but then also in community that can give you some information about that. But I don't know if one of our engineers wants to jump in and ask about the functions in a file or answer.
I can take a stab at this one. So I assume what you're meaning is written functions that the students are writing themselves in order and saving those as a separate file that would be used by your main file. While I don't believe we have the functionality available to have different files be communicating with themselves, it is possible to encapsulate functions, like write them as functions, and then in the logic in the canvas, use those later on.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, so we read that question very differently from one another. So I hope that Elder received the response that they were hoping for. So Merrick asks, do you have hub-to-hub communication on the roadmap?
At this time, I am not sure.
Okay. And then do we plan to port robot inventor machine learning modules to Spike Prime, either Python or block coding?
Yeah, this is another one, admittedly, at this time that I'm not sure. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, right. And that's fair. So I appreciate people asking. You know, sometimes we are just not aware of what is on the bigger picture roadmap. There's another question about a Scratch 3.0 extension for Spike Prime and the interaction between Lego hardware and sprites on the Scratch screen as an option we miss compared to We Do 2.0. Ooh, people are asking a lot of questions about just the different compatibility and
So for the question, do we have API on the roadmap to get WeDo sensors recognized by the Spike Prime? Paul, are you still online?
Yep, actually, I do have something about several of these. So I don't believe that any of those are currently on the roadmap, but one thing that can be really helpful for us, because you're talking to the software development team, to get those things like show the importance of those things is to just be sharing like what you're making with them. If you're using the hub-to-hub communication features from Robot Inventor right now with your students, like sharing those either on social media or directly back to our like on the community forums, that can be a really helpful way to just see like what folks are really using in the community. So having that kind of sharing those feature uses back to us would be terrific. Same for the Scratch 3 extensions and things like that. Just seeing how those are getting used in classrooms would be a great way to help get those items on the roadmaps.
And while we're paused for just a second, I just put into the chat a link to our support portal, because that's not only for, technical questions and asking for support, but it's also for requesting new functionality. So they're aggregating all of the inputs from you all, and then that can be something that determines whether something is put on the roadmap. So you're welcome to please, share how you're using it or what functionality you would like to see through the portal. Okay, Pablo asks when the Spanish version would be released. So my understanding is that currently the beta version is English only, but then in the next couple of weeks, so by early July, we should have the full release ready to go, along with all the documentation in different languages. Okay, and Merrick, I know we've chatted before. It's been a while. You're welcome to send specific questions to me, and in fact, anybody is, if you wanted to have like a more kind of interactive response. So my email address is success@lego.com, and you're welcome to send me direct questions, and then I can kind of forward it to the right people. Yeah. So Paul, I can connect you and Merrick together. Okay, and are there additional questions that we can address from the chat? I know there's a lot of questions about backward compatibility with other systems and programs. Okay, this is a great question. Thank you. Oliver is planning to learn Python for coding Spike myself. Should I use the Lego app to start? Or what about other platforms such as Pybricks? Any recommendations?
So personally, I think that the IDE or otherwise known as the canvas that we provide for programming in Python does provide a lot of like basic instruction for how to just code Python regularly, while it is specific to the Python or to the Python experience that we provide, given that we have the modules and stuff for our specific hardware. It is a very good environment for just learning straight Python on its own. I think that it is a great tool for beginning this process. So I would say, yeah, I think you can use the app to go ahead and get started on your own Python knowledge adventures. Very excited to hear that this is inspiring people to take on learning Python fully.
And in addition to using the tutorials and programs that are in the hub, we do have also these courses for both teachers and students to bolster your knowledge or to teach you how to use our resources to learn Python. So I put a direct link to where those courses are. Okay, and then another question from Jody is, does LEGO have a group of content or project creators that they would recommend a team to work with to create content using this technology? That's a really interesting question. I know within our community space, which is community.legoeducation.com, we have a number of folks who have been using our products and who are writing programs and who are sharing some of their best practices. So that might be a good place to start. Okay, and we'll see if there are any more questions. Okay, Chris, can we advance the slide? Awesome. So here's the big question. When and how should folks update? So we have a little bit of a flow chart here so that can help you determine if now's the right time or if it would be better to wait. We know that some schools or districts have an app approval process. And so if you're in a position where you're not able to go ahead and upgrade to the new app, then you're welcome to use the web-based app. Again, we'll be providing some documentation about how your students can still save their programs and access their work using the web app. Additionally, if you have questions that are specific to the API release, you're welcome to reach out to your account manager for additional information, or again, you can email me at success@lego.com. But back to, are you ready to update? If you're only using the block-based coding, go for it. There should be no problem about making that transition. If you want to start programming with Python, so yes, go for it. If you're just at the beginning stages, there's no reason not to go ahead and update. And then that knowledge base will help make that will help make starting a bit easier. And then if you're already coding with Python in the legacy app, again, our recommendation is if you are at a natural stopping point, such as at the end of the school year or between spring and summer sessions, or if you're at the end of your FLL season, then now's a really good time to go ahead and make that change. If you're still having students or if you're still working with the code and the project, it might be better to just pause until you have that natural break. Okay, and then all of our in-app content, as well as all of the courses, those are all going to be updated and released when the API release is official as well. So any changes that are in the code or any changes that are in the content that we've created to go along with it, that will be reflected in all of our documentation on the sites. Okay, and it looks like Paul has answered a couple of questions in the chat. Okay, and so Pablo, again, the PDF guides that are currently online, they'll be updated the moment that we have the official release. All right. So once again, I'll put my email in the chat. And then I'll also put a link to our customer success program. So again, if you just happen to find out information about this webinar because you saw it posted on social media, it might be a benefit for you to join customer success so that you get a direct email when there are product releases and updates, or if there are additional instructional resources that we've put online. So that will be kind of our direct messaging line to you to make sure that you get all of the latest and greatest information. And I believe we also have that as a QR code. I think the next slide might be that. There it is. Thank you. Oh, and right now, by the way, when you sign up for Success, or if you're currently a member of our Success program, then you get this great downloadable icon block activity that you can use as a manipulative with students. We'll also have this available as a word block in the next few weeks. So it's just kind of a nice way for the students to maybe drag while other students are maybe working on the device. So we know not everybody has all students on all devices all the time. So this is just a nice way to include students who maybe don't have their hands on a keyboard. Okay, whoops, there's another question from Merrick. You tout backward compatibility for all blocks. And he's asking a very specific question about the movement. Oops. And I'm not sure if one of our engineers can address that question about the compatibility.
I believe that you'll get equivalent functionality out of the move for rotation movement blocks that has the steering angle and either rotation or degrees, or but not distance. And you'll have to kind of calculate the distance part on your own, because the start moving direction will kind of map into a percent turn for both. Yes, it does not. That's, I think, part of the reason that it was removed is that it's a bit of a slippery metaphor that didn't actually translate to what the motors were running. So it was giving people, I think part of the reason those APIs had been somewhat inaccurate is that they were giving you a sense that you were doing something that you weren't quite doing. So these kind of lower level blocks will let you create the functionality that's actually there. But again, if you have like example snippets of code that you want to just send to Success, mention my name, and I'll take a look and see if there are gaps on things that you can't do. I'm happy to take a look at it.
Great, thank you, Paul. Okay, well, let's just do kind of a final call for any questions that you have, since we do have so many members of our software team here. And again, this is a recorded webinar, so we'll kind of edit it down, make it a little bit more concise, and then post it so that it's available for folks who weren't able to attend. And then again, questions can be directed to me, or we will also post all this information in the community where you're able to ask questions and interact with other folks there. So. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Give folks another minute or so just to check out any final questions that they have. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your great questions. And then a special huge note of gratitude to all of the LEGO Education software folks who were able to join us on the call and to address people's questions. So everybody, thank you again. Have a great day or afternoon or evening, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, everyone.